The recording begins with static. Then a chair scrapes across hardwood. Then his father's voice. Daniel is parked on Thornton Lane. Engine off. Hands flat on his thighs. The earphones are in. He's been sitting here for 20 minutes. He's listened to this 3 times already. He knows exactly what's coming. He presses play again anyway. His father's voice is calm, unhurried. The voice of a man who has prepared every word. Jeffrey instructs the solicitor to retire the legacy obligation. Those are his exact words. Retire it. As if it were a clerical footnote, not his eldest son's future. No hesitation. No lowering of the voice. Not even a pause. Daniel stares at the dashboard. Outside, Thornton Lane is empty. The estate sits at the end of it. Stone facade, east wing. The roof he fixed alone in February. He'd given up his London practice for this house. He managed contractors and appointments, drainage repairs. Jeffrey's medical calendar, 3 years of his life, handed over without being asked. This was the man who drove 4 hours through a January snowstorm to watch Daniel accept an architecture award, who stood at the back of the hall, who said nothing on the drive home except that he was proud of him. That was Jeffrey Ashworth. The recording is still running. A solicitor's measured tone, his sister's quiet agreement, the sound of papers being arranged on a table. Daniel reaches over, presses pause. He's heard it 3 times now. And he still hasn't reached the worst part. This was 3 years ago, before the microphone, before the solicitor and leads. Before Daniel understood that some promises are made specifically to be broken. The call came on a Thursday morning in November 2021. Jeffrey's chest. A hospital in Harrogate. Serious but stable. Daniel was in London. A meeting with a client. He left mid-sentence. His sister Celia sent a card 2 days later. His younger brother called once. Left a voicemail expressing concern and asking to be kept informed. Daniel drove up that same Thursday and didn't go back. He closed his London practice quietly, forwarded his active clients to a colleague, packed what he needed, and took the smaller bedroom in the East Wing. Nobody asked him to. It simply seemed like the only reasonable thing to do. For 2 years he ran the estate, contractors, maintenance schedules, Jeffrey's specialist appointments and leads, the drainage problem on the East Wing roof that nobody had touched in 8 years. Daniel fixed it himself over 3 February weekends. Cold enough to see his breath, Jeffrey watched him from the window once. Didn't offer to help, just watched. When Daniel came inside, his father told him directly that the estate would go to the one who showed up. He said it without fanfare, no dramatic gesture, just a quiet statement in the study on a Tuesday evening. Glass of whiskey in one hand, complete eye contact. It was the most unguarded Daniel had ever seen him. He took it as a promise. He should have asked for it in writing, 3 weeks before the meeting. Daniel was in the kitchen making coffee when he sees it. A land registry deed. Face up on the table, left there carelessly or deliberately. It's hard to know with Jeffrey. He doesn't touch it. He reads it where it sits. It's a transfer document for the Ripon property, a secondary estate asset. 2 signatures at the bottom. Celia's name, his younger brother's name. A solicitor's stamp Daniel doesn't recognize. His own name isn't on it anywhere. He photographs it with his phone, replaces it exactly as he found it, pours his coffee, waits until Jeffrey comes downstairs. He keeps his voice even, mentions the document without urgency, says he noticed it on the table and wanted to make sure it didn't need his attention. Jeffrey doesn't blink. He tells Daniel it's an administrative correction. Old paperwork from years back, routine tidying of the estate records, nothing that affects anything significant. He says it warmly, pats Daniel on the shoulder as he passes, asks about the East Wing guttering, and Daniel almost accepts it. That's the part that will stay with him later. How easily he almost accepted it. That night he sits at his desk in the East Wing, types the property address into the land registry portal. The transfer record loads in under a minute. It's clean, it's legal, it's properly filed. And the transfer date isn't years ago. It's 11 months ago, stamped 3 weeks after Jeffrey's last cardiology appointment. The one Daniel drove him to. This was 2022, spring. Celia arrived on a Saturday with 2 suitcases and a laptop bag. She told Jeffrey she wanted the help with the admin burden. Free Daniel up for the physical estate work. She said it as though it were a favor to him. Daniel was on the east wing roof at the time. He heard her car on the gravel, came down to say hello. She hugged him at the door and asked if he'd lost weight. She stayed 4 months. The study door was closed more often after that. Low voices. Occasionally the sound of the printer. Jeffrey started taking his calls in there rather than the sitting room. Nothing dramatic. Just a gradual, quiet shift in the geography of the house. When Daniel asked, once, casually, Jeffrey told him Celia was helping reorganize some financial paperwork, legacy admin, the kind of thing that accumulated over decades if you weren't careful. He said it the way men of his generation discuss anything financial, briefly and without elaboration. Daniel accepted it without pushing. He told himself Celia needed something to contribute. She wasn't built for drainage repairs and contractor schedules. Sitting in the study with paperwork gave her a role. He almost felt sorry for her. He was managing the estate. She was shuffling files. That's what he believed. He had no reason not to. He was also the only one in the house who had no idea what those files actually contained. He didn't go to Harrogate for legal advice. Everyone in Harrogate knows the Ashworth name. He drove to Leeds on a Tuesday morning, found an independent property solicitor through a professional directory. No family connections. No shared history. Just a woman with a clean desk and no reason to be diplomatic. He laid the photograph deed in front of her without explanation. Asked her to tell him what she was looking at. She took her time. Read it twice. Then told him the transfer was legitimate, properly filed, and recent. 11 months was not a clerical correction from years ago. 11 months was 11 months. Then she looked at him carefully. She told him the transfer didn't appear to be isolated. There were patterns she could identify from the filing codes alone. At least 2 other estate-linked transfers in the past 14 months, possibly more. She'd need authorization to dig further. Daniel kept his face neutral. He asked her to continue. She slid the document back across the desk. Then she asked him something he wasn't prepared for. She asked whether he'd been formally advised of any changes to the primary will. He told her he hadn't. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she asked whether he'd known there were changes to be advised of. The room was very quiet. Outside, Leeds moved at its usual pace. Taxis, lunch crowds, the ordinary mechanics of a Tuesday. Daniel sat with that question for a long moment. He hadn't known. He hadn't even known there was something he didn't know. Early 2023. February. Jeffrey had a cardiology follow-up in Leeds. Daniel drove him. 40 minutes each way. Jeffrey slept on the return journey, or appeared to. He was good at that, appearing to be somewhere else when it suited him. That morning, Daniel helped him dress. Jeffrey's coat was on the back of the bedroom chair. Daniel held it open for him, and as Jeffrey slid his arms through the sleeves, something fell from the breast pocket. A business card. Face up on the carpet. Martin Hale, solicitor. Private client services. Not the family firm. Not anyone Daniel recognized. He picked it up, handed it back without comment, then asked, carefully, casually, whether Martin Hale was someone new to the estate's legal arrangements. Jeffrey didn't miss a beat. He told Daniel that Martin was an old acquaintance, a golf contact from years back. Occasionally consulted on minor matters, nothing related to the estate. He took the card and slipped it into his pocket with the ease of a man returning a pen. Then he looked at Daniel with something close to warmth. Told him he worried too much, that the estate was in order, that Daniel's job was the house, not the paperwork. He said it gently, almost affectionately, in direct dialogue. Gaslighting peak. Then he asked about the east wing guttering. Was the new bracket holding properly? Had Daniel checked it since the frost? And just like that, the conversation moved. Daniel answered the question about the guttering. He drove to Leeds. He helped his father into the cardiology unit and waited 90 minutes in a plastic chair. By the time they were back on the A61, he'd almost forgotten about Martin Hale entirely. Almost ATHE. The call comes on a Wednesday afternoon. Jeffrey's long-standing family solicitor, Hutchings and Bray. 40 years of Ashworth estate work. The man who drafted the original will. He's ringing as a courtesy, routine due diligence ahead of the family meeting. He wants Daniel to know his name remains on the primary will. Principal beneficiary, unchanged. He uses that word specifically, unchanged. Daniel thanks him, keeps his voice even, sets the phone down on the kitchen counter, and for the first time in 3 weeks he exhales properly. He sits with it for a moment. The transfers were administrative. The lead solicitor had flagged patterns, but patterns weren't proof. Martin Hale was a golf contact. Celia was shuffling files. Jeffrey had looked him in the eye and said the estate goes to the one who showed up. Hutchings and Bray. 40 years, unchanged. He drives back toward Harrogate from the east wing, feeling something close to relief. The countryside is flat and gray under a February sky. The kind of afternoon that asks nothing of you. He turns the radio on. His phone buzzes on the passenger seat at the first roundabout. An email. The lead solicitor. He pulls over. She's located a third property transfer. A small parcel of land on the estate's northern boundary. Modest value. But the filing date stops him cold. It's dated the same week as Jeffrey's health scare, the week Daniel left London without finishing his sentence. The week he decided, without being asked, that this was where he needed to be. The turning point, the moment he believed meant something. It hadn't been a turning point at all. 6 months before the family meeting, Martin Hale's private office is in Leeds, 3rd floor, clean lines. The kind of room designed to make large decisions feel routine. Jeffrey arrives first, then Celia, then Daniel's younger brother James, then his sister Rachel, who hasn't visited the Harrogate estate in 14 months and sends birthday cards 3 days late. 4 of them around a table. One solicitor, one agenda. Daniel isn't there. Daniel doesn't know this meeting exists. Martin presents the discretionary trust structure in full, a legal framework designed to sit alongside the original will, not replace it. Just render its principal provisions effectively non-binding. A quiet override. Technically clean, professionally executed. Jeffrey listens, asks 2 questions, then signs the framework documents without ceremony. The whole thing takes less than 90 minutes. Celia asks about the timeline for activation. Martin tells her the trust becomes operable upon Jeffrey's formal instruction, which can be issued at any point, even at a family meeting, even in a dining room, even with a microphone hidden 40 centimeters above their heads and a ventilation shaft. Nobody at that table mentions Daniel by name. Not once. They don't need to. His absence from the room says everything that needs to be said. That same afternoon, Daniel is back on the Harrogate estate, up on the scaffolding along the east wing's northern face, checking the drainage bracket he'd installed the previous February, making sure it held through the frost. It had held perfectly. He built it to last. That was always his mistake. He buys the microphone from an electronics supplier in Leeds. Cash, no conversation. It's smaller than he expected. The size of a thumb. High-gain capsule. Designed for acoustic research. The man behind the counter doesn't ask what it's for. Daniel doesn't explain. That evening he waits until Jeffrey retires. Then he works in silence. BXX access panel in the upstairs hallway, a torch between his teeth, 40 centimeters of ductwork, slow, careful, 1 centimeter at a time. He tests the feed from the hallway with his phone. The dining room below comes through clean, every word. He replaces the panel, goes to bed, doesn't sleep. The next afternoon, the family arrives. Cars on the gravel, voices in the hallway, the ordinary sounds of a family gathering, polite and warm and entirely performed. Daniel sits in his car on Thornton Lane, earphones in. His father calls the meeting to order. The same voice, the same unhurried authority. Then he instructs Martin Hale to proceed with the trust activation. He refers to Daniel's guaranteed share as a legacy obligation. They're moving past. He says it without lowering his voice, without hesitation, without anything resembling guilt. Indirect dialogue, betrayal, peak. Daniel sets his phone face down on the passenger seat. He opens the car door. He doesn't get out. He just needs air. His hands are against his knees. They're shaking. First time in all of this. First time his body has refused to stay composed. He pulls the door shut again, picks the phone back up, presses it to his ear. And then Celia's voice comes through the earphone. She's laughing. N2. 2 years ago, before the health scare, before Martin Hale, before any of it had a name. Jeffrey's study. Late evening. The house quiet. Celia sits across from her father. No laptop, no paperwork, just the two of them and a conversation that has been building, slowly, carefully, for longer than she's admitted to herself. Jeffrey doesn't open with sentiment. He never does in this room. He tells her plainly that Daniel's presence on the estate has become a structural problem, not because of incompetence, not because of anything Daniel has done wrong, but because Daniel asks questions. He pushes back. He holds opinions about how the estate should be managed and isn't shy about expressing them. Indirect dialogue, betrayal peak. Jeffrey tells her that an estate of this scale needs to pass to people who will maintain rather than challenge, who will preserve rather than redirect. Daniel has always been the wrong fit for what the estate needs to become. Celia doesn't flinch. She doesn't argue. She doesn't express concern for her brother or ask whether this is entirely fair. She asks one question. She asks how long it will take. Jeffrey considers it. Tells her 14 months if they're careful. 12 if the legal framework moves cleanly. He'll need a solicitor outside the family firm. Someone with specific experience in discretionary trust structures. Celia nods, picks up her glass. That's it. That's the entire conversation. No raised voices. No visible guilt. No moment of hesitation where either of them almost chose differently. Jeffrey refills his whiskey, asks Celia about her drive up from London. She tells him the M1 was reasonable for a Thursday. And downstairs, 2 floors below this room, Daniel is fixing a leak in the East Wing kitchen. He'll work until midnight. He always does. He doesn't go inside. The family meeting ends at 4:30. Daniel watches from the car as Martin Hale emerges first, coat on, briefcase in hand, the unhurried pace of a man who considers the work done. Then the younger siblings, James and Rachel, side by side. Quiet. A little too quiet for people who've just secured a windfall. Then Celia. She pauses on the front step and looks down the lane. Just for a moment. Then she gets in her car. None of them look toward Daniel's. Jeffrey stays inside. Daniel watches the last car disappear around the bend at the end of Thornton Lane. Then he opens his phone, not to call, to send. 2 emails, composed the night before, sitting in his draft since 11 p.m. He reads them both once more, makes no changes. The first goes to the Solicitor's Regulation Authority, a formal complaint against Martin Hale. Attached, the full recording. the documented timeline of property transfers, the lead solicitor's written assessment, the filing dates cross-referenced against Jeffrey's medical appointments. The second goes to Hutchings and Bray, Jeffrey's long-standing family solicitor. The man who called Daniel on Wednesday to confirm his name remained on the primary will, unchanged. The man who had no idea a discretionary trust had been structured around him entirely. Daniel presses send on both. Then he sits back, hands still now, completely still. His phone rings 4 minutes later. Hutchings and Bray. The solicitor's voice is different this time, measured in a different way. Careful. He tells Daniel he wasn't aware of Martin Hale's involvement. He wasn't aware of the trust framework. He needs time to review what Daniel has sent him. Then he says something that shifts everything. He tells Daniel that Jeffrey may not have understood the full legal implications of what he signed. Daniel looks at the estate at the end of the lane. Stone facade, east wing, the roof he fixed alone in February. He tells the solicitor that Jeffrey understood exactly what he signed. The unexpected shift comes from the legislation. Hutchings and Bray spend 3 days reviewing the trust framework Martin Hale constructed. What they find isn't what anyone anticipated. A 2024 amendment to inheritance law, quietly passed, barely reported, had closed the specific discretionary trust loophole Martin Hale had built the entire structure around. The framework Jeffrey signed in that Leeds office 6 months ago is legally unenforceable. It always was. From the moment the ink dried, Martin Hale had either missed it or ignored it. The SRA investigation will determine which. Celia stops returning calls within 48 hours of the emails being sent. James issues a carefully worded message claiming he attended the Leeds meeting without fully understanding its purpose. Rachel says nothing at all. The solidarity that filled that dining room on Thursday afternoon evaporates completely by the weekend. It always does. That's the thing about calculated loyalty. It only holds when the calculation still works. Jeffrey's legal team advises him to settle quietly, to reinstate the original will in full, and avoid probate litigation. Jeffrey agrees within the week. No phone call to Daniel. No letter. Just a formal instruction through Hutchings and Bray. Daniel receives the confirmation on a Tuesday morning. He's sitting in the East Wing, the room he's lived in for 3 years. The roof above him, the one he fixed alone in February cold, holds perfectly. He should feel something definitive. Relief, vindication, something clean and final. Instead, he sits with a quieter question. If he hadn't noticed the deed on the kitchen table, if he hadn't driven to Leeds, if he hadn't spent 40 minutes on the hallway floor feeding a microphone through ductwork in the dark, would he ever have known? Or would it simply have happened? Quietly, legally, and he would have walked away believing his father had just changed his mind. The SRA investigation concludes 4 months later. Martin Hale's practicing certificate is suspended pending a full disciplinary hearing. The discretionary trust is formally dissolved. The original will is reinstated under probate review. Every property transfer logged by the lead solicitor is flagged for independent assessment. The Ripon property, the northern boundary parcel, all of it, returned to the estate record as it stood before Celia arrived with her suitcases and her laptop bag on that Saturday in 2022. Justice is specific when it finally arrives. That's what Daniel hadn't expected. Not dramatic, not loud, just documented, methodical, one filing at a time. Jeffrey attempts contact twice. A handwritten note delivered through Hutchings and Bray, the family solicitor he'd spent 2 years working around. Then a phone call. Daniel lets go to voicemail. He doesn't delete the message. He doesn't listen to it again either. He just lets it sit there. Some things don't require a response. Daniel instructs his solicitor to sell his inherited share once probate clears. He doesn't want the estate. He doesn't want Thornton Lane, or the East Wing, or the drainage bracket he built to last. He doesn't want any object that requires him to return to Harrogate and stand on that gravel and pretend the last 3 years were something other than what they were. He returns to architecture, not London, a smaller practice in Durham. quieter, his own. He takes 2 clients in the first month, works from a converted terrace with good light and no history. He doesn't announce the move. He doesn't explain it to anyone who wasn't there. He simply goes, the way his father always assumed he eventually would. He was right about that much. Just wrong about the reason. He got what was his. He just didn't want it anymore.